with Ty Conti deactivating her Twitter due to rumors of her being with Sammy Guevara and more. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report for December 19th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official, and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. With Roman Reigns firing Paul Heyman ahead of his bout against Brock Lesnar day one, R-Truth talked about the Tribal Chief on After the Bell, noting that Reigns hasn't even reached his peak. I don't even think he's reached the pinnacle of his career, and he's as hot as a 6-shooter right now. He's hotter than a firecracker. He's hotter than hot sauce. He's matured so much. I've seen him succeed to levels and levels. He's bridged gaps, and he has that it factor all around him, man. Inside and out, he has the it factor. I've seen him come up with promos in his head. We're driving, and he is constantly working, man, constantly trying to perfect his craft. Even when I would go to Florida to his house, he's in the gym at his house. He's thinking of a promo. What do you think of this idea right here? He's a guy that I know for a fact 24/7 he's trying to perfect his craft and take it higher than it can go. Since WWE has been releasing many of their wrestling talent and backstage staff for the past couple of years, it makes sense that tensions have risen backstage in the company. But the same could be said for AEW now. Recently, AEW President Tony Khan came under fire after Urban Meyer was fired from his role as head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars on the 16th. Given the Jaguars are partly owned by Tony Khan, he has come under fire. ESPN reported that the Jaguars plan to withhold the remaining guarantees on Meyer's contract, with him having 4 years left on his deal. This comes over a month after Khan had criticized WWE over their previous round of releases, with him saying WWE only gives out temporary contracts these days. Andrew Zarian would note that both WWE and AEW are experiencing issues behind the scenes. There seems to be a divide happening between talent in both companies. Spoke to multiple sources yesterday, and they feel like many would not go to the other side if there was an opportunity, either your team WWE or team AEW for many. Following the release of Jeff Hardy, it was reported that WWE had offered him a chance to go to rehab, which he would decline. On his podcast, Ric Flair would give his take on this situation, saying, "Well, you know how I feel. I couldn't agree more. I love Jeff, I love his wife Beth, and above all else, they got a great relationship. You know, I've been there and done that. I went there one time and they told me like to go back again. I said no." Back in July, Bray Wyatt would end up being released from WWE to the shock of many fans. Talking about the reason behind him being cut, Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio, Bray Wyatt is a completely different situation. Wyatt scared a lot of people, because if someone like Wyatt gets fired, then only guys like Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar are safe. I think that's not really the case when you are at that level. The only reason someone would want to cut someone like that would be if they wanted out and made a lot of noise about it. With Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday, Natalya talked about how Charlotte Flair is in a tough spot in WWE, given she has already achieved so much. Charlotte Flair, I think it's a tough spot because there's only so much that she can do. There's only so many places you can go. Once you've done it all, once you've main evented WrestleMania, you've won X amount of championships. When you have had everything and you've experienced everything, it is really, really cool to watch other women rise to the occasion and get the chance. AEW star Sammy Guevara recently announced that he and his fiancée are no longer together. This comes as a shock since the two got engaged on an episode of Dynamite not long ago. Following this news, many fans were under the impression that Sammy was leaving his fiancée for Ty Conti, as the two have been rumored to be together. Due to this, Sammy and Ty would end up trending on Twitter, which would lead to Conti deactivating her account. The Public Enemies podcast wrote Ty Conti got bullied off of Twitter because Sammy Guevara broke up with his fiancée, and they think it's her fault. I hate wrestling fans, America. One fan wrote, Ty Conti deactivating her account is another example that if these people were given pitchforks, they'd happily run people out of town based on gossip. Social media has given absolute nutcases a platform to play bully with no consequence. WWE revealed that 15 college athletes will be a part of their initial name, image, and likeness program, as WWE looks to build new stars. Speaking to Kevin Kellam, Bianca Belair mentioned that she is excited to be a representative for this. You know, when I first started in 2016, I used to always say, man, I wish I found this a lot earlier. I got a late start. But you know, I think my path is unique, and I love the path that I took. I think that, you know, if I would have started right after college, I would have never gotten to CrossFit, and I would have never gotten into powerlifting, which I use. I pull a lot of things from CrossFit and powerlifting, and I use it in the ring, and it even modeled me into the person I am, and a lot of that goes into the academic area. So I love the journey that I had. I do think it's amazing. There's a lot of collegiate athletes that are getting this opportunity, you know, getting a head start, and I have to say, being a collegiate athlete, I hope that I'm a representation and I've proved that it can work. I'm not the only one in WWE that's a collegiate athlete being successful right now. You know, we have that grit. We're coachable. We know how to work hard. We know how to have downfalls, but still be able to bounce back. So I'm really excited about this program. Dan Lambert's American Top Team has become a big focus on AEW programming, with UFC stars such as Jorge Masvidal making appearances for the company. Given their feud with the Inner Circle, Jake Hager spoke on the AEW Unrestricted podcast about working with former UFC heavyweight champ Junior Dos Santos, as he noted that JDS could become a champion in pro wrestling. It was really cool to be a part of that angle, kind of pulling a rabbit out of your hat each week, testing the limits and seeing what we could do. The Minneapolis street fight came together because it's known in all the streets as the deadliest of street fights, and this was the only place this angle could culminate at. No, it was really cool to be a part of. Like, Dan Lambert on the mic is absolutely pure magic. So fun to work with. Junior Dos Santos, oh man, that guy's gonna be a pro wrestling champion one day. He like really wants it and really loves the sport. You can tell. And those guys are so eager to learn and like do this stuff. After defeating Kenny Omega in November, Hangman Page realized his dream of becoming AEW World Champion, as he talked about what holding the title is like and if he had any regrets since winning it with Renee Paquette. It's great, it's a little surreal. I don't know that it ever will sink in at this point, you know what I mean? It's also a little frustrating because I've worked so hard for so long. I've won this championship and I've not gotten to wrestle a match since I won it. And it's been 3 or 4 weeks and I've been asking for a match with Bryan Danielson since, you know, the Wednesday after the pay-per-view. Look, I haven't gotten to wrestle, so then it's kind of like frustrating as well. While he's gotten to defend his title against Bryan Danielson, Page explained why he feels it was never set in stone for him to be a top guy. I wouldn't even talk about at least my journey to the AEW World Championship as some kind of grand scheme that was hatched on day one or something like that, because it never was. At least to me, it was never that way. When AEW started and I, you know, realized I was going to be suddenly like, I was just the guy like losing all the Bullet Club multi-man matches. I was, you know, not to say a nobody, but I certainly wasn't like the main event guy, who was suddenly going to be main eventing the first ever title match in AEW. Like, I knew people wouldn't buy it, and it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter what I did in the time between. It was too fast. It was too soon. I knew people they would be forgiving. They would go, oh yeah, okay. But I knew deep down they wouldn't buy it. It felt like I got off on the wrong foot, and I wanted to rectify that. And I felt like the only way you, Hangman, can is to be vulnerable and to, you know what I mean, let that loss and disappointment come out. With one of his nicknames being the Anxious Millennial Cowboy, the AEW champion touched on his anxiety. I'm not a conversationalist, I don't know, anxious maybe, and maybe like, this is a story I've never told. In, I don't even know if middle school, maybe high school age, I had super bad social anxiety, like diagnosed medication social anxiety. But like I can remember one time sitting at my desk, right? This was like in the middle of taking a test or something, and I could remember my whole body would like turn flush red. I would start sweating. Then I would become aware of, God knows what reason, like no one's looking at me, this is happening in my body. So then, you know, it gets like 10 times worse. What's going on? Like my eyes start watering, like I'm just sitting at my desk. I think wrestling helped me get out of that to an extent, because not like that, not that I had like low self-worth or anything like that, but like wrestling was always my passion and where I felt comfortable and what I liked doing. Once I was able to do that and see some success in it, being surrounded by like 20 people to 200 people to 2,000 people, 20,000, like as that grew, I think you get more comfortable with that in yourself. As Drew McIntyre looks set to take on Madcap Moss at Day 1, Dave Meltzer gave an update on potential plans for his booking, with him saying it's probably just to give Drew a win, since obviously Roman and Drew are going to get together. I'm surprised, but it makes sense. McIntyre made it known that he is looking to continue picking up victories en route to facing the Universal Champion, which will be interesting to see when the time comes. There is an argument to be made that WWE has too many champions, as one belt that changes hands the most frequently is the 24/7 title. Since being introduced in May of 2019, there have been more than 150 title reigns with this belt. Talking about the championship on his podcast, Jim Ross said the Hardcore title was just another watered-down championship, and now it somehow became even worse. The 24/7 title, right? It is just hideous, and not even realistic. It has had so many champions, you cannot name them all. In the age of the internet, pro wrestling suffers from many angles and storylines getting spoiled, but when it comes to Roman Reigns firing Paul Heyman on SmackDown, WWE did their best to keep this a secret, with Ringside News reporting that Roman turning on Heyman this week didn't happen all at once. The writing team was told the closing segment was set to include some big shifts, but no other information was given to them. Also, Heyman turning Brock into beast mode in LA was meant to be a turning point. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.